Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a look at my FPL team selection for game week 2, but first of all we are going to take a look at game week 1 before looking into my transfer plans and exactly what I am looking to do ahead of game week 2. Now obviously it was the first game week of the season last week, so that is kind of the main one that everyone likes to focus on and the one that a lot of people like to, really make knee-jerk transfers based off of one game week. We are seeing a lot of transfers in and out for players who did well and players who did bad in game week 1, when at the end of the day, a lot of the time you do just have to be patient. You've picked your team for multiple game weeks. Myself, I looked really at the first 6 game weeks, so this team, a couple, like even just last week, I was looking at this team as a good enough team to last me the first 6 game weeks. So instantly, before we even get into this week's team, I am going to be rolling my transfer this week because I think my team is well set up enough for game week 2. But I did get 52 points last week, which does give me a rank of 5.1 million. At the end of the day, rank, I'm not really too bothered about the rank at all for the next, or at least for the first few game weeks. I think until it gets to about game week 5 or 6 is really when you can decide, or start to see if you have had a good start to the season or not. Game week 1, everything's up in the air. A lot of people, have set their team up purely just for game week 1, and will be looking to just kind of top the leaderboards in the first game week and then not playing the game for the rest of the season is kind of what you do see at the start. So I'm not too bothered at all about my rank, and I'm pretty happy with how my team did get on in game week 1. A lot of my players, done quite well, but I do have a lot of blanks in there as well, with some potential promise and nice fixtures for a lot of those guys that did blank anyway, and a couple of lessons learned as well. As you can see with the bench, I did end up benching Elliot Anderson with a 6-pointer, and he was only 1 ball recovery or 1 defensive contribution away from an extra 2 points, which would have given him an 8-pointer. So I think what I've kind of learned from this is that I am probably just going to play Elliot Anderson in every single game, hoping he can pick up, attacking returns. We saw him pick up a great assist for Chris Wood at the weekend, but also defensive contributions against any opponent. So he's probably going to be in my starting 11 for the foreseeable, and I will be rotating most of my other players. Outside of that, Rob Sanchez and Cucurella both picking up a clean sheet was nice. I think they both got bonus as well. Cucurella ended up losing a bonus point, which was given to Sanchez, so nothing really lost on my part there. Both picking up an 8-pointer, which was really nice. The double Nottingham Forest defence didn't go as well. Obviously no defensive contributions for those guys, and no clean sheet either, which wasn't too ideal. But again, Nottingham Forest do have some of the best defensive fixtures over the next few games, which we are going to take a look at as well, and I'm more than happy keeping both of these guys in my team. A nice clean sheet for Porro and a 3-0 victory over Burnley, where Spurs looked fantastic. And again, we did cover a lot of this over in this week's Ultimate Guide, so if you do want more of the stats that we look at in this video, and some in-depth look at some of last week's games, we do cover all of that in the Ultimate Guide, the stats show for game week 2 this week. So make sure you go and take a look at that if you haven't watched it already at the end of this video. But Spurs are putting in a lot of crosses, and I do think Porro is going to be at the end of a lot of assists this season, so very happy that I did pick him. And of course Spurs do have a nice little run over the next few games. Mohamed Salah picking up that last minute goal really did save the captaincy as well, a nice 16-pointer for him. And then other than that, pretty much disappointment for a lot of my other players. Palmer 3-pointer, Roger 3-pointer, Ndiaye 2, Evanilson 1, and Watkins only get 2 as well. I'm expecting a little bit more from Villa over the next few weeks. Rodgers and Watkins obviously playing against a solid Newcastle defence. I wasn't expecting a ton out of those guys in game week 1. At least 1 return would have been nice, but I do think over the next few weeks we will start to see that. And if any of them don't perform, then there is options that I can move to. Obviously Semenyo for Rodgers is available, and obviously someone like Gyökeres, if he does pick up the form for Arsenal, is an available swap for Ollie Watkins. Obviously you can see in the bottom left hand corner as well, I do have 0.5 million in the bank, so that is kind of easy enough for me to hold off on moves with price changes happening. Obviously Semenyo up to 7.1 million now. I can still make that move from Rodgers in the next few weeks if I do want to go there. So yeah, a lot of flexibility in this team, which is really nice. And Dye was really the one I think that I was most disappointed with. Everton just didn't show really much at all attacking wise against Leeds, so he is probably the one that's on the chopping list the most at the minute. He could potentially be someone that does come out. I'm going to give him another week or two, because obviously that is how I've set my team up, and I'm not going to judge it off of one game, but if he doesn't perform over the next week or 2 weeks, he will probably be the first one to come out of the squad. Now, looking at how the squad is going to be set up for this week, I was very, very tempted by a bench boost this week, and I think I am just going to hold off. I will take a look at Fantasy Football Hub's My Team in just a little bit to kind of show you why I'm going to hold off, but right now, as much as I really like the look of Dubravka against Sunderland, Williams against Crystal Palace and Porro against Manchester City, I think I'm just going to hold off a little bit. The Gueyu and the third bench spot there is really what is putting me off the bench boost this week, or I probably would be activating it. I think Sunderland have a cup game a couple days after game week 2, so I can see him getting minutes in that, so it's probably going to be very limited minutes, or next to 0 minutes as he did in game week 1 for Gueyu in game week 2 as well. Who I'm going to be playing is going to be Esteve. Now, you can see with some of the clean sheet odds in the bottom left-hand corner, Esteve, Burnley are one of the highest for clean sheets this week. Now, if you want to see all the clean sheet odds, again, that is all over in the Ultimate Guide, but we are just showing my team for this video, and Burnley have, one of the highest, so I did want to have one Burnley player in the team. Obviously, Chelsea are just a little bit below Burnley in terms of odds, so I'm going to play Sanchez, who is just playing for the better defensive team against a West Ham team that did look extremely poor as well. So Sanchez definitely over Dubravka for me, but I do want to play one Burnley defender, and it is going to be Esteve, who did also look pretty decent for defensive recoveries, defensive contributions, as you can see on screen. It was very close to picking up those extra points, and I think potentially against Sunderland, obviously with high clean sheet odds and a decent chance at defensive contributions, he could be a really nice one for game week 2, and it is probably one of the only games that he is going to actually be in the starting 11 for me. I'm playing one Nottingham Forest defender because I think Palace are going to score. They are of course losing Eze to Arsenal, which could neglect their attack a little bit, which is again even more reason why I was tempted by the bench boost with Nico Williams in there. But I think Milenkovic is going to be okay to do the business. Hopefully he can get some defensive contributions this week and potentially a goal, which would be fantastic. And of course the double Chelsea defence and Sanchez and Cucurella, I think I'll be very surprised to see West Ham pick up a goal against a pretty solid Chelsea defence. Now in midfield, I'm going to be playing all 5 midfielders, starting off with Mohamed Salah, of course, against Newcastle away, but he is not going to be taking the armband for me. I don't think he looked too great in match day 1, to the point where I really feel as though he needs the permanent armband this season. I'm gonna kind of give him a wait and see. I'm happy enough owning him. I think it is going to be a very tough game against Newcastle, a game which I wouldn't be surprised if Newcastle went on to win, but he isn't going to be taking the armband from me. Right now it is on Cole Palmer, who didn't really look great at all again in game week 1, so a potential howler there from me. I was tempted by an Ollie Watkins captaincy or even an Evan Nilsson captaincy against Wolves as well, but it is going to be Cole Palmer, I think, who will take the armband for me this week. Of course, got the double Aston Villa attack against Brentford, who just conceded 3 goals to Nottingham Forest, who struggled a lot in pre-season to score, so I'm really hoping that Ollie Watkins can continue his pre-season form and Rodgers can get on the score sheet as well. That would be really, really nice for me. What I'm noticing is there is a lot of away fixtures. I noticed in game week 1 I did have a ton of home fixtures, and of course with it being the start of the season, a lot of teams are just going home, away, home, away, home, away. So, after a lot of home fixtures in game week 1, it does look like it's going to be a lot of aways in game week 2, which hopefully doesn't affect the team too much. The one player I was, again, like I mentioned, not really too happy with in game week 1 was Ndiaye. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here and play him again because it is a home fixture against Brighton, who did look pretty decent defensively, but hopefully Ndiaye can pay off my trust in him and get something this week, because I am benching some pretty decent defenders in order to start him. And of course Elliot Anderson makes it into the starting 11 after some after my mistake last week of benching him for his 6-pointer. Now moving on to the My Team fixture over on Fantasy Football Hub, where I'm going to talk you through my potential chip strategy with the bench boost. Now obviously you can get this for yourself over on the Fantasy Football Hub website, where you can still sign up with the link in the description if you want to use all the stats that you do see in my videos, or obviously this feature here, which does let you go forward in time and see how your team is going to look in a few game weeks time. So this is kind of how I'm looking for game week 2, with of course Sanchez in there for Dubravka. So I don't have the best game week rating with only an 89%. It was, I think, 96% for last week. Game week 2 is looking like one of my weaker game weeks, if I'm honest. But again, you can kind of see how the bench is looking here. 3.9 points for Dubravka, 3.7 for Williams, 3 for Pedro Porro, and 0.5 for Mark Guehi. So that's technically, 4 points, 4 points, and 3 points, which is an 11-point bench boost pretty much. I don't think you can really expect a point from Mark Guehi, but even if you do, you're talking 12 points maximum, which really isn't that awful. If I actually get a 12-point bench boost, I would be pretty happy with that. But the reason I'm not going to be activating it is because of game week 8. Now, if I go over to game week 8 here, I've got 90% game week rating. I can optimize my team here, which puts all of my highest predicted scoring players in the starting 11. And then we look at the bench. We have Sanchez at 3.6, Esteve at 4, and Nico Williams at 3.8. So there's not a huge difference. Technically, you could look at about 4, 4, and 4 points for each of those, which still equals the 12. Potentially 1 point again for Mark Guehi. But the fact that it's game week 8 means that I'm going to have made some transfers at this point. Now, someone like Ndiaye is playing against Manchester City away from home. I think by the time game week 8 comes around, Ndiaye probably won't be in the team anymore. So I probably will be looking at someone a little bit different. Potentially someone like Ismail Assar when Crystal Palace come into some nice fixtures. So I don't really have to worry about that at all. But the reason I'm going to be waiting is because Mark Guehi I have no idea still how you pronounce that name. He probably isn't going to be the team if I'm going to be bench boosting. Now, I don't want to put a huge focus on the bench boost, but I do at least want to have 4 players who are going to be starting. So, by the time game week 8 comes around, we're looking at potentially 7 transfers in the bank or having been used so far. And if I'm going to be using the bench boost, I could easily just take Mark Guehi out at this point. Now, there is a couple of decent fixtures you can get. I'm pretty sure Strand Larsen, by the time game week 8 comes around, does have a nice fixture. As you can see, they are playing against Sunderland away from home. So that could potentially be a move for me if I can try and free up 1.5 million in the bank with my other transfers. And then we've got a really solid looking bench boost. So that's kind of where I'm going to be at. Even if not, again, if I do still keep Mark Guehi on the bench, potentially by that point he will be getting game time for Sunderland, but the expected points, the predicted points are still looking pretty similar. And this is the week, obviously Burnley are playing against Sunderland in game week 2. Burnley will be playing against Leeds at home in game week 8 as well, so the other promoted team. And I think Sunderland just looked really nice in game week 1 against West Ham, scoring 3 goals. I think by the time game week 8 comes along, we could have them settled into the league, at least the promoted teams settled into the league, and not on that Premier League high, which we do often see with those teams. So potentially Leeds will kind of settle down, not really be doing too well at this point. Obviously that is just hope at that point. But I think it's going to be a very similar bench boost in game week 8 than it is in game week 2. And I just feel like with Guehi, as just right now it just feels a little bit unprepared for a bench boost, and I feel like in 6-7 game weeks time it's going to be a lot easier to use that bench boost. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to rush into it. At the end of the day, it is still a chip. It's not the best chip in the world, but I don't just want to throw it away, which I could potentially be doing if I did use it this week. But that is going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Good luck for Game Week 2, and again, if you are looking for more FPL content, you can watch my ultimate guide video for Game Week 2, which is of course on screen, and it'll have the entire Game Week 1 roundup and all the stats that you could potentially need to know for the upcoming game week. So make sure to give that a click once this video has finished. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.